In the modern day, it is argued by scholars such as Patrick Nash that the general public does not really appreciate short film as an entertainment and storytelling medium. But if short films are so far out of the mainstream, why are they still being made? The most common reason people are still making shorts is to provide a stepping stone to a career in the film industry. But if someone makes a good 2-minute film, does it really suggest they could then go on and make a good 2-hour one? Richard Raskin, a key theorist who wrote about short films, came up with a conceptual framework of 5 key characteristics that a good short film will display. In this video essay, I will first go through these 5 pairs of properties and illustrate them using 2 case study short films. I will then consider whether each one can apply to making a good feature film. The first film I will be referencing is by Martin Scorsese, titled It's Not Just You, Murray. It tells the story of Murray, a man who rises to power as a gangster with the help of his friend Joe, who later double-crosses him. I will also be analysing George Lucas's Electronic Labyrinth THX 11384EB. It tells the story of a man trying to escape a futuristic compound where the government is tracking his every move with technology. The first thing that Raskin wrote would lead to an engaging short film was having a narrative that consists of a chain of cause and effect relationships. In Murray, the police enter the room where Murray and Joe are illegally making gin. The causal result of this is firstly that the two try to escape, which secondly leads on to Murray being arrested. These events have coherence and inner logic, as one leads on to another through cause and effect. However, purely having causality would lead to an uninteresting film, as choice is necessary for the characters to come alive. In Electronic Labyrinth, if inmate 1138 was simply acting based on causality, when the government ordered him to stop running, he would have. Instead, he keeps running, a choice that creates the excitement and conflict in the film. This balance between causality and choice is also very important in feature films such as Goodfellas, as most audiences won't sit through a 2-hour film that has a narrative that just doesn't make sense. Secondly, Raskin wrote that characters need to have a central core of attributes that remain constant. Audiences will respond negatively and lose immersion in the film if a character does something completely improbable for who they've been set up to be. However, this doesn't mean that they should act predictably and unexcitingly. For the short film to be successful, the characters also need to surprise us. For example, it's a surprise when we see Joe starting an affair with Murray's wife. However, seeing as he portrayed Murray before in the gin factory, it's unexpected and yet fully compatible with Joe's character. He's set up as someone who had happily backstabbed Murray, so when he does this again, it's at first a surprise, but then completely believable. This also applies to feature films. In the film Star Wars, it's a surprise when Han Solo comes back to save the day at the end of the film. However, it makes sense to the audience as his character has been set up as someone who does have a conscience and wants to do the right thing. So it's a surprise, but completely believable for his character. As Raskin writes, the best short fiction films generally keep dialogue to a minimum and rely primarily on visual storytelling. In the limited running time of a short film, it's far more efficient to communicate ideas visually than attempting it through extensive dialogue, which there just isn't time for. This is not to say, however, that the best short films are silent. Instead, the audio can be used to enhance the film, communicating more information and emotion. For example, in Electronic Labyrinth, sound is used from the beginning of the film to set a mysterious and unsettling tone, which wouldn't have been there otherwise. Goodfellas uses audio in an even more complex and effective way. As Paulin Ray writes, it is the music that plays a key role in telling Henry's emotional story. Without the music, we wouldn't get as much of an insight into Henry's thoughts and feelings, showing how sound can add further depth to the images of a film. The fourth thing that Raskin argued is that there must be a dynamic interplay of character and object for a good short film. Often, specific objects are singled out and invested with special meaning. In Murray, the object is money. The film opens with Murray showing off to the audience about various expensive items he owns.
$5,000.
This clearly sets up that his main motivation in life is money, and it's the interplay of his life with money and possessions that the film focuses on and deconstructs. In Electronic Labyrinth, the tension in the film is built through the interplay of characters and the object of technology. We get the feeling that 1138 is really being hunted by technology itself, which makes a comment on society and anchors the film as being science fiction. In Star Wars, the special object is R2-D2, who contains the Death Star plans. It's this robot that sets off the action of the film, as both the heroes and the villains are searching for him, which causes the conflict, which lasts for the rest of the film. While short films can't accommodate the same scale of narrative as feature films, they're still able to communicate a deep level of meaning. However, if the filmmaker attempts to fit too much in, the short will feel messy and be ineffective. Short films must therefore balance depth with simplicity. As Raskin states, simplicity can be understood in terms of the time, a kind of temporal space allowed to the viewer to absorb what is going on. For example, in Murray, there's an extended scene at the end of the film, inspired by the ending of Fellini's 8½. It appears to exist outside of the narrative, and serves as time for the audience to consider the themes of the film. In this dreamlike sequence, we see Joe using a megaphone giving directions to all of the characters who appeared in the film, including Murray. This reflects the idea that Joe has been using Murray for his whole life. In a similar way, the ending of Goodfellas has a summing up monologue from Henry, where he talks directly to the audience. This helps the audience wind down from the action and consider what the themes of the film were, and what they'll take away from it. All of these 5 pairs of characteristics can apply to both a good short film and a good feature film. However, this doesn't mean that making a feature requires the exact same skills as making a short. Jeremy Howe states that shorts exist in obeying their own peculiar rules of narrative style and subject. While Murray and Goodfellas do both employ the same narrational storytelling technique, simply extending Murray to being 2 hours long would not lead to an equally good feature film. Goodfellas uses the technique more sparingly, dispersed around more fleshed out scenes of well-written dialogue and action than can be found in Murray. The running time of a feature requires work to keep the audience engaged, so the narrative structure cannot be the same as that of a short film. Additionally, while shorts can be full of ambiguity and still be successful in communicating emotional feeling, this type of ambiguity could not be sustained over a feature-length film. This is why the feature-length version of Electronic Labyrinth features far more backstory and character development than can be found in the short. Despite these differences between the two art forms, however, short films are still a great way of learning the filmmaking process on a project of manageable scale. All of Raskin's 5 parameters can be applied to making a good feature-length film. Therefore, if a filmmaker can prove they have a mastery of the short film form, it suggests they are ready to move on to making feature films. So while making a good 2-minute film isn't a guarantee that someone could easily make a good 2-hour film, it's certainly the most manageable way to begin a career in the film industry.